Hey guys, it's Lauren. So I didn't listen to music for 3 months for a science experiment on myself. And in this video, I'm going to tell you my experience with that. This is the outline for today. So chapter 1 is explaining exactly what I did. Chapter 2, why I stopped listening to music. Chapter 3, what I learned and going through my experience and what I gained from it, everything. Chapter 4, my advice for you. Chapter 5, how I personally want to approach music listening in the future. And Chapter 6, limitations and conclusion. So Chapter 1 is on this sticky note because it didn't need a whole page, but exactly what I did is first I deleted all music apps off all of my devices. And then I didn't allow myself to play music or other sounds through YouTube or other websites. And for studying, since I need some kind of sound for that, I downloaded fire sounds and rain sounds to my iPod shuffle and then listened to that with these headphones. So that brings us to chapter 2. Why did I stop listening to music? And the first one is the most notable, and that was because I had a music addiction. And even though things like internet addiction, video game addiction, and social media addiction are talked about very frequently these days, I think music addiction is something that is less talked about. And this was a really interesting paper I found from 2010. And it says, quote, "In today's world, music consumption is ubiquitous, and it appears that some individuals, especially among younger people, are unable to function effectively in daily life without continued access to their music of choice." And the way I'm defining addiction is by these 3 principles laid out by Jabra et al. 2000. And that's 1, a craving or a compulsion to do something. 2, loss of control when it comes to this behavior. And 3, persistence of behavior despite accruing negative consequences. This study in 2010 was a study where participants were deprived of music for a set amount of time, and they were asked to reflect on their experience. And one quote really stood out to me. One of the participants said that they felt restless, frustrated, or irritated when without music, and that's exactly how I kind of felt when I didn't have music, because I was addicted to it and could not handle being without it for 1 second. So the second reason why I stopped listening to music is the lack of presence. You know, because I was so addicted to listening to music, it was very hard for me to stay in the present and then focus on things that are actually happening around me instead of just focusing on the music that's playing, to drown absolutely everything out and not listening to anything else or paying attention to anything else that is happening around me. And the third reason why I stopped listening to music is emotional confusion. Now, this is an interesting one, so let me explain. Basically, I felt as though music was really confusing my emotions, and there's 2 ways that this occurred for me. Exhibit A, I would feel some kind of negative emotion, and then I would just not want to think about it. So I would just throw music on whatever I was feeling in order to feel better or just escape from what I'm feeling. And I call this the numbing of emotion. Or exhibit B, I'm like a little bit sad. I have some kind of slight negative emotion, and then so I play sad music in order to exaggerate the current emotion that I feel, in order to intensify it into something that's not even there. And the reason why people listen to sad music when they're sad is definitely a very complex subject. So let me talk about it for a little bit. But a paper by Kawakami et al. 2013 said, quote, listening to sad music induces ambivalent emotions. So you have kind of conflicting emotions, and even though the music itself is sad, you may feel some kind of comfort from it or some kind of happiness from it because you're romanticizing your emotions. But I'm not talking about listening to sad music when you're sad. I'm talking about listening to sad music when you have some slight negative emotion that you just need to think about, but instead of unpacking it, you're throwing sad music on top of it, and then you're completely identifying with this song of choice instead of actually evaluating your current state. So those are kind of the two ways that you can become confused about your emotions by listening to music. Now that brings us to chapter 3. What did I learn? So this first finding is kind of very subjective, so I'm going to explain it the best I can. So do you remember the first time you started listening to music? Like the first time you actually, sought out music on your own? Because for me, I was around 8 years old when one of my friends was like, do you listen to music? And I was like, no. From the age of 8 onwards, I listened to different kinds of music for different periods of my life. When I listened to different songs, I remember different periods of my life in which I listened to that song most frequently. And so music helps you recall very specific moments of your life in which your life was most connected to a particular kind of music or a song. And a 2008 paper says, quote, because of its near ubiquity, music has been identified as important in the construction of autobiographical memories and thus for making judgments about oneself and others. So you associate different times of your life with different types of music. And I bring this up because everything before this is not defined by any kind of music, because I started listening to music when I was 8, right? So before this, my memories are all defined by sounds of nature, because before the age of 8, since I was not listening to music, I'm reminded of being outside and just listening to the birds and listening to the trees rustling and just being more in a space where I'm listening to nothing or I'm listening to just outdoor sounds gave me this very specific kind of childhood nostalgia and very vivid memories of childhood. And I thought that was interesting. And in conjunction with this, I also found that childlike traits in me came back more. For example, creativity and wonder. And it was pretty nice to experience these traits again. And I felt myself appreciate the world a bit more as if I'm seeing it for the first time, kind of thing. 2.2, heightened sense of presence. So being without music, I really was able to focus on details way more and be content with just the simplest things in life. For example, I really liked listening to people talking to each other, and not in a creepy way, but like I'll just be walking to class, right? And then these people walk by me and they're like, that exam was so hard. Yeah, I think I failed. Blah, 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 blah. And then it was just catching those simple glimpses into others people's lives that made me really happy. I just felt so much closer to humanity and felt more close to the world around me, and like I'm so integrated with what's going on in my environment instead of just focusing on like my little world with my music. So that was really nice. Simple activities became fun because I got to the point where I would be content with just noticing the little details that happen. But anyways, 2.3 is emotional clarity. This is in response to the problem I listed before about emotional confusion. So being without music, I think definitely helped me get a more accurate sense of my emotions because I didn't have music to cloud my judgment about how I feel about things and made me way more self-aware. So let me tell a story. There was one day at work I had that was in the middle of this experiment, and I was kind of disturbed and a little bit upset because of something that happened at work. And so on the drive back, I could have easily just played a sad song and then completely identified with that song and then exaggerated my emotions to this extent, as you can see in this picture. However, because I wasn't allowed to listen to music, I had to actually think for myself and think about how I actually felt. And I was able to reflect on why exactly I got upset by this thing that happened. And not having music contributed to me being self-aware of this trigger that I have. And we all have our triggers. We all have things that make us upset. And I think it's really important to understand ourselves better by evaluating how we react in certain situations and how we behave because of maybe like some things that happened in the past. So that's 3, having a more accurate knowledge of my emotions. Chapter 4, what is my advice for you? Okay, and let me start off by saying I'm not anti-music. Music is so important to our humanity, in fact. Newborn infants detect the beat in music. In this paper by Winkler et al. In 2008, says, quote, "The capability of detecting beat in rhythmic sound sequences is already functional at birth." And further, music is the universal language of mankind, as said by Henry Wadsworth. And this is because music is observed in every single culture in the world and every single culture that ever existed. Every civilization that we've ever studied has had a form of music. And also music has health benefits as well. In this paper by Finn and Fancourt in 2018 says, quote, "There is support for the application of listening to music, especially within clinical settings for stress reduction." So I am not against music. I love music. However, I think there is a problem with over listening to music because it's the first time we have unlimited access to music where we can just play it endlessly and whatever time we want. And I think that's a problem because there is absolutely no room for silence. So what's my point with this? I'm saying that if you are a person who consumes music intentionally and healthily, you have no reason to do anything because you already leave space for silence. However, if you relate to me where you do have some kind of music addiction, then here's what I would recommend for you. So this is a graph titled "Relationship between happiness and time spent on music detox." So on the x-axis, we have time, not drawn to scale, and on the y-axis, we have happiness. I don't know what units, but let me take you through this 3-month journey. So the first week was really bad because this thing that I relied on so heavily was taken from me. So it was really uncomfortable. However, I had to overcome this little dip. And then the first month, I really saw a lot of these benefits that I mentioned. And the second month was the same. I really enjoyed the benefits that I listed, and it was really nice to just be without music for the second month as well. However, I would not recommend doing this detox for over 2 months because the third month I started observing some negative side effects. And these include constant mumbling to myself. As a person who already talks to myself a lot, it was way more than usual. I really felt like Rapunzel. You know how Rapunzel's mom was like, stop with the mumbling. You know how I feel about the mumbling. And then Rapunzel was like, I am the lost princess, aren't I, mother? Or should I even call you that? I felt like Rapunzel because of how much I was mumbling, and I think I did this because there was so much silence that my brain was trying to think of ways to fill in the silence just by talking. And this second one, bird noises, kind of goes along with this. I just like learned how to make bird noises. I think that's also me trying to fill in the intense amount of silence I had. So what's my advice then? I would say just to try out not listening to music for a bit. And if you feel like you are overly dependent on music, just for one day, try to not listen to music. Or if there's a task that you always do with music playing, then try to do it without music for once and then observe how you feel about it. Because like, even for 2 months, that's kind of intense. So just like for one day, 1 hour, you know, just try it out and then see how you feel about it. And then chapter 5 is how I personally want to listen to music in the future. Number 1 is to have set tasks to designate music listening to. And these tasks are tasks that are so boring and repetitive that it's very hard to be motivated to do them without music. Though it was a good challenge that I did these tasks without music for these 3 months. I think music playing with these tasks are really a very key motivator for doing them. And I kept note of the tasks that I felt very unmotivated to do without music. These include working out, busy work with class assignments, cleaning, and repetitive tasks such as laundry and making these sketchbook slides, etc. And going back to the first study I mentioned about the participants being deprived of music, this participant really described it well. It says, quote, "Walking to class is tolerable without my iPod, but not having it to study or work out is not." And I really agree with this sentiment. Second thing I want to do is not have Spotify Premium again. But since you're allowed to pick what songs you want to listen to, even if you don't have Spotify Premium, if you're on your laptop, I'll listen to new music when I'm doing my busy work on my computer. However, when I'm not on my computer and I need to do tasks such as working out or cleaning, I'm going to put about 1,000 of my songs on this iPod that I have. And I feel that having this iPod will definitely help me be more intentional about listening to music because it is a designated device to listen to music on. So I'm really excited to put all my favorite songs on here and then be more appreciative of music when I am listening to it. The third one is to have set tasks where I'm not listening to music. Like, I'm not allowed to listen to music when I'm doing these tasks. And the first one is anytime I'm in nature, because I had such a newfound appreciation for nature and the sounds of nature in this experiment, even though it sounds cheesy, but just walking outside was so nice because it was so beautiful to listen to the sound of the wind and just the birds. And yeah, I think there's so much to appreciate about the sounds of nature, and I don't want to lose that again. Along with that, I'm not going to listen to music when I'm with other people because, you know, you're like talking to someone already. Yeah, I also found the joy of just being so immersed in a conversation. So it's like, why do you need music when you already have this person to listen to? Overall, being content with less. You know, there are some activities where you really don't need music because what you're doing is enough, and I really learned to be content with just doing one task instead of adding something else like music to it. And that brings us to limitations and conclusion. First limitation, I'm not a musician and I've never expressed myself creatively through music. I mean, I have played some instruments in the past, but I never really enjoyed it that much. I kind of just played instruments because it was something that I had to do, or that was, you know, normal to do. It was normal to know how to play an instrument, but I can't say that I enjoyed it over other hobbies that I had growing up. So since I don't express myself creatively through music, I wonder if the way I view music is different from a musician who actually does express themselves through music regularly. And I'm curious to hear how you feel about it if you are a person like that. Two is, it's very hard to not listen to music entirely, at least where I live, because music plays in places like restaurants, the gym, on my university campus, etc. However, I must say that it was very close to being no music at all, because the times I did these things are not nearly enough for it to have a real impact on this study, in my opinion. Third limitation, the sample size is 1, and the participant of this study is not a very reliable source. So feel free to replicate the study if you have a music addiction, not if you're consuming music healthily already. So conclusion, just try out not listening to music for one task or one day and see how you feel, because there's so much to be learned from the silence. So that my second point, embrace the richness of silence. Even though it is silence, it is something that you can really appreciate, and I've learned how to be very content with the silence and just being with my own thoughts. And don't be afraid of it. But yeah, third thing is, if you're subscribed to this channel, make sure to check the bottom of this video description. But yeah, that's it. Bye guys!